July 13, 1980. A beautiful summer Sunday dawned on the quaint English market town of Kirkby-in-Ashfield, Nottinghamshire, England. Kirkby was the sort of place where nothing much ever happened, the sort of place teenagers longed to move away from, the sort of place no one outside the surrounding area had likely ever given a second thought. As one disapproving Kirkby native puts it, if some people didn't have to live here, no one would come anywhere near the place. Of course, many residents see the town in a more positive light. Kirkby is home to Kirkby Castle, a beautiful historical landmark dating back to at least the 13th century. The rolling hills and fields of the surrounding English countryside provide serenity and natural beauty, as well as ample room for large festivities. On the morning of Sunday, July 13, 1980, one such happy event would be the stage for a bizarre incident which would finally put the area on the map. The Hollinwell Show was a yearly festival which took place at the Hollinwell Showgrounds just outside Kirkby-in-Ashfield. As part of the 1980 show, the Forest League of Junior Jazz Bands decided to hold a charity event, a junior brass and marching band competition which would involve around 500 children coming to the area from as far away as 65 kilometers, or 40 miles. The young contestants marching in these bands were certainly nervous about the event, and by the 9 a.m. start time, they were also tired from their early morning travels. Unbeknownst to them, there was no reason to be nervous about a competition that would never happen. The event began without incident until approximately 10:30 a.m., when the first children began to collapse. Quotes from witnesses on the field describe a terrifying scene. "We were ready for the display when one or two children collapsed. Then a few more went, and a few more. We called off the event, but others fell as they came out of the arena. Then spectators started dropping," said Terry Bingham, a band organizer. Another witness reported, "Some kids were catching their friends as they fell, and then they were falling down themselves. No one could understand what was happening." For the children affected, it was much worse. 10-year-old Kerry Elliott described his experience as such. "I went all week and got pains in my stomach, and then I fainted. Everyone was falling down, and some were crying. My stomach was all tight and aching." Another performer, 14-year-old Petula Yates, said, "I tried to grab hold of my drum, but just fell on the floor. My friends were collapsing all around me." Some adults were affected as well. Linda Elliott, Carrie's mother, rode with her children to the hospital where she too collapsed. "My arms and legs felt like sponges, and it was like a cramp in my stomach. That's all I remember." Strangely, when the children's uniforms were loosened to try and give some relief, 3 of the bands noticed odd water-filled blisters, called blebs by the locals, on the children's skin.
This field behind at Hollinwell in Nottinghamshire is where it all went wrong yesterday. About 500 youngsters had gathered for the Forest League of Junior Jazz Bands competition. As you see on the board, it says the family show. That's exactly what it was. Whole families suddenly slumped to the ground.
I feel a lot better than what I did yesterday, but my legs are still a bit shaky.
You don't think it might just have been something that went around because people saw that other people were being ill?
No, I don't think so.
You're quite sure you couldn't have been imagining it?
No, I weren't imagining it.
Nothing at all. We thought at first it was just like fainting, but then of course so many went down that it couldn't possibly be.
When it was all said and done, 259 children were rushed off the field and to hospital that day. In addition to the band members, 15 adults and even 2 babies were also affected, with total estimated numbers coming to around 300 individuals. To the town's relief, everyone involved survived, with only 9 children kept at the hospital overnight. It seemed the symptoms resolved as quickly as they'd come, with most of the affected back to normal as soon as they regained consciousness. With the incident seemingly in the past, the people's focus quickly turned to the million-dollar question. What did it? To those who stood by and watched the bodies fall like bowling pins that day, the most plausible guess seemed to be food poisoning. Indeed, when the police swept through the area a short time later, their first order of business was to take samples of food from the stalls set up around the field. The Severn-Trent Water Authority also tested the water which had been supplied to the event. However, further thought quickly put holes in this hypothesis. All of those affected ate differently that day, and some were fed completely with supplies brought by their coaches. As further confirmation, all food and water testing came back negative for bacteria and impurities. Because of the strange water-filled blebs found on some children's skin, the theory of a mystery virus was also put forward. A possible candidate was a Coxsackie virus, which was active in the area and also caused blisters similar to those found that day. However, this theory was rejected much quicker than the first, as there was simply no way 300 people could all have been affected so strongly by the same virus at the same time and all recover so quickly. In the following weeks, many theories came and went without any real consideration, though some were decidedly less believable than others. They included high-frequency radio waves, fumes from a fire at a plastic factory a mile away, and even, of course, aliens. As these first theories fell away, the townspeople began to settle on what seemed to be the clear best explanation: a mystery gas cloud, most likely insecticide from a neighboring field. Indeed, one affected adult reported that his eyes had begun stinging and watering, and even described the experience as like nerve gas poisoning. Some witnesses said they had seen an ominous cloud of gas covering the field moments before the incident. A spokesperson from the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham also described the symptoms as consistent with exposure to fumes of some kind, and multiple people even reported doctors giving out diagnoses of gas inhalation to affected children. In the eyes of the people, this theory was quickly becoming the truth. Unfortunately for the townsfolk, though, solid evidence for this explanation simply failed to turn up. Police tracked down the farmer who owned the neighboring field to the showground. No one had sprayed chemicals there in the last decade. The rest of the adjacent land, owned by the Nottinghamshire Golf Club, had also not been sprayed. As a further blow to the theory's credibility, the local fire service even stated that the wind was not blowing in the correct direction for this to have been possible. The authorities, having eliminated every other possible explanation, came to rest on their final verdict 3 days after the incident. The cause of the Hollinwell incident was, and is, officially mass hysteria. Chief Inspector Ogden explained that, since no other theories seemed to fit, it must have been the pressure and stress of the event which caused the children to collapse. Indeed, they had been standing at attention for an extremely long time. The chairman of one band even stated that it was disgusting the way the judges kept the children waiting so long. No wonder they passed out. Predictably, this explanation did not go over well with most townspeople, who had largely made up their minds.
But in fact, I have seen the hospital notes of one child whose father took the notes away with him, and that says under diagnosis quite clearly inhalation of organic poison, and it's signed by the doctor.
You say mass hysteria is a symptom of a nerve gas. Could it be that mass hysteria was the right diagnosis, but it goes deeper than that?
Yes, in a very mild form. There's a letter in the New Scientist on Friday pointing out that in a very mild form the first symptoms are in fact confusion and panic, and therefore a diagnosis of hysteria is not exclusive of a poisoning by an insecticide.
What are your conclusions then?
I'm saying that I think it raises a whole range of questions which haven't been adequately answered, both about this particular case and about the use of some of the things we put on our land in general. I don't think people realise how lethal they are.
As the memory of the curious incident at Hollinwell faded from public consciousness, the mystery around its cause remained. Why did 300 children all collapse at the same time that day? To some, it was as simple as exhaustion and group psychology. To others, it was as complicated as a government cover-up for illegal insecticide spraying. Unfortunately, as time marches on, less and less people care every day, and we move farther and farther from ever finding an answer.